Good morning, everyone. My name is Emily Wagner, and I'm the Executive Director of CCYP. And I was looking around the room just now as we prepared to come up here, and it's so nice to see so many CCYP folks in the room right now. And I'm going to embarrass current and former board members for just a second, so folks can see like the army of folks who are here. Matt Cole, I see in the way back. Adam Burnett, if you could stand up just for a second. Matt Cole, Adam Burnett, Steph Cox is here, former board member. Marissa Sear, I know you just sat down, but Marissa Sear is a former board member. Charlotte Green, Stacy Pugh, Paul Nidzwicki. I don't know where Paul is right now, but oh, there he is. Hi, Paul. How's it going? And then both Lauren Barker and Catherine Clark, former staff folks, are here as well as our current board, Christina Wiseman and Christy Dolbeck. So nice to see all of you. If you could raise your hands. And many members too, actually. There's a ton of folks, Haley Coate, Hunter Cahill, Marina Jube, just a really wonderful showing of folks who are here and committed to the issue at hand. Show of hands, has folks who haven't been on the board or who aren't current members, have you heard of CCYP before? Oh, nice. If you haven't, find one of those names that I've called out. They can tell you all about it. But CCYP, for those who don't know, is the largest networking and community mentoring organization on the Cape. We are 20 years old. And really, the spiciest part of CCYP's name is the why. I think if I had $1 for every time someone asked me if they were aging out of CCYP, I wouldn't have to do fundraising. But really, that's what this panel is all about. It's really making sure that we're bridging that intergenerational gap, that without the folks who are our focus, of course, is the emerging workforce, but without folks who are further along in that process, we don't have anyone to pass the energy, the knowledge, the wisdom back. So this panel is really about that at hand, right? Connecting generations and honoring all the amazing work that's been done so far, but introducing and exploring how emerging advocates can build on that work, it can bring fresh energy to that work, can bring tools, and to bring really just a new oomph to what's going on here. So I know I probably don't have to say this for the folks in the room, but advocacy is really hard work. It takes patience and persistence and time and a willingness to show up even when progress feels really, really slow. Before CCYP, I spent about 15 years in DC, and one of the things that always shocked me, with every legislative cycle there, is that it takes 7 to 11 years to pass a good piece of policy, which is just, it's generational work. That's really what we're doing here. It's work that just takes a lifetime, and you really do have to be able to pass that work along in the chain of advocacy. This panel is about that handoff, really. It's about where wisdom and energy meet innovation and meet change and what's possible there. It's also a reminder that lasting change isn't a solo sprint, it's a relay. So we're really looking forward to talking about this panel, how they embody that spirit, and how they've been working with optimism, purpose, feeling it out as they go, and just generally getting a sense of, what could make it easier, quite frankly, and how to keep bringing up the next new body of fresh energy that can carry on this generational work. So with that, I'll turn it to the panel, and Austin, I'll start with you to introduce yourself. Hopefully your mic is working. Oh, try it
working?
Again.
There we go. Hi, everyone. I'm Austin Miller. I'm on the select board in Provincetown. I'm also the chair of our year-round market rate housing trust. So I really got started, I was fortunate enough to be able to buy my first home in Provincetown a little over 5 years ago. And that's an experience that, I really hope for everyone in our communities who wants it, because it's really the core of the American dream. And, it's one that's not really attainable for a lot of folks in our communities on Cape Cod. And so, spending my whole career in banking and housing finance, I wanted to find a way to give back to the community, and so I looked at the openings on town boards in Provincetown, saw that we had openings on the Community Housing Council, applied to join that, as well as the year-round market rate housing trust, and that's where it really snowballed from there in terms of getting involved.
Awesome. Yeah, it's a quick start to the deep end, it sounds like.
Yes.
Hannah, how about you?
Hi, everyone. My name is Hannah Vanderscheuren. I'm a young scientist at the Marine Biological Laboratory, and I've been on the Cape for about 3 years. Within a couple of weeks of moving to the Cape, I learned of colleagues who, like me, had come to the area to start their careers, but were really priced out on housing, and the experience of either being housing insecure, living in your car, living with friends, or having to do the winter housing shuffle, like somebody referenced earlier today, and moving in the span of 1 year, 3 or 4 times, it was becoming a very untenable place for people to really be able to take this great professional experience of working at Woods Hole Science Institution and really advance in their career. So with that, along with other scientists at the MBL, we started a housing action committee to secure stopgap housing for some of our employees who are experiencing housing insecurity at an affordable rate. And that also led to some town advocacy, getting a good sense of the great people in Falmouth who are also working on these issues and getting involved at the town level with the Falmouth Task Force for Workers and Families, which is looking at reducing the amount of attrition of our young workforce and families in town.
Thank you. Francesca?
Hi, everyone.
Uh-oh.
Not working.
One more.
Oh, there we are. Hello, everyone. My name is Francesca Galazzi. I'm an associate member of the planning board in the town of Orleans, and I'm also a liaison to our community preservation committee. So it's really exciting to be here with everyone today. I joined the planning board in September 2024, so it's been just a bit over a year. At the time, I was working remotely. I grew up in Orleans, moved home after college, and was having this experience of being able to live on the Cape through family and afford to live here because of my remote job, but started kind of looking around at that point like, okay, I'm a little isolated, I'm less engaged with my community than I was growing up, in high school and through college. There's so many volunteer hours that are required and service opportunities that are available. And I was just like, okay, there's got to be a little bit more going on for me right now. And I also was noticing that I was missing some kind of professional development opportunities. Right? I was working my very first job out of college and wanted some other ways to learn and to participate. And so I started kind of thinking about or looking into other opportunities to participate in my town. I think the other really motivating thing for me beyond professional development in my decision to join a board was a feeling of frustration. I was really frustrated with hearing assumptions that were being made about my peers. I love my community here. I feel so fulfilled by my life, and I was hearing so many statements like, do the young people even exist? Like, they're all leaving. They don't want to live here. They don't care. And that's not, my lived experience here. I have so many incredible friends who love living here. And I have friends that want to move back. They live in Boston. That's where they can afford to live and work. They drive home every weekend because they just love the Cape. And if they could live here now, they would. So I felt like there were these assumptions and this kind of missing conversation that I wanted to help represent more fully myself and my peers. And I was really looking for, again, that kind of professional development and experience to learn something new. So I reached out and joined the planning board.
Love it. Jasmine?
Gotta give it a second. Hi, my name is Jasmine Valdes. I work for housing assistance for the past 2 years now, and I moved here in 2020. Still work in the restaurant industry, but have worked in the restaurant industry since 2011, and that's where I met a lot of my friends here, working at Hog Island and Local Break in Orleans and Eastham. And I actually moved here. I had family here. They were living in Yarmouth, and due to the rental increase and not being able to find another place to live quick enough, their landlord sold their home. They had to leave, and they were here for about 9-10 years. So I ended up moving into my own space, which was insanely priced. But thankfully, working in the restaurant, I was able to afford it. But since working at housing assistance, I have felt this urge to just, I don't know, not necessarily myself speak out, but speak to my community and my friends that I have met through all of these places, and just kind of get a group started. And I join the I'm so sorry. I ended up going to a planning board meeting, which I'm so sorry.
You're doing a great job.
Okay. Sorry. I went to a planning board meeting, and that is where I kind of heard that same sentence that Fran was saying, like, where even are the young people? And that kind of like lit a fire under me, and I was able to put a group together and kind of talk about these things. And so, yeah, that's what I have.
No, that's great. I'm going to ask a follow-up question on that. But first, I want to talk to Francesca and Austin a little bit. Both of you decided to sit on local boards. That's a pretty big choice, and something that I think most folks who are coming here, who are working, who have kids, who have full careers, might not do normally. Can you talk a little bit about your decision-making process, how you did it? I know you talked a bit about it to start, but just, yeah, what was that like to make the choice and to get recruited in and to onboard?
Yeah, so I never in a million years imagined myself running for office and being in local government. An outgoing select board member who served on the year-round trust with me really encouraged me to run for her seat, and I thought, you're crazy. Why would I ever do that? But then, going through that process was really just having to stand in front of groups of people and talk about myself and my experience and background and go print out signs with my name on them and ask people to put them in their yards was so strange, but really one that I found. I was worried going into it that it was going to be a little bit like we all see on Facebook with people just throwing vitriol at each other back and forth. But what I found in that process is that people are actually a lot more kind and engaged and really looking to work with local leaders on solutions because they see the problem in front of them every day. And so I've been really encouraged by that sort of process and going through that with everyone in the community. So,
Thank you. Anything that surprised you about the process, Francesca?
Yeah, I mean, kudos to Austin for having to run for an elected position. I was appointed to the planning board, and I have to say, I think what really surprised me, once I got over that initial hump of making the decision to participate, one thing that really helped to kind of follow through on that decision was meeting with the chair of my board and having a casual conversation with him to understand, like, what does the planning board do? What's the time commitment look like? How do I participate? And really explicitly hearing from him that a younger person's voice was really important and really needed gave me the confidence to participate without, necessarily being an expert in the field and in the topic. But what surprised me was how easy it was once I made the decision. Like, the barrier to entry, I think beyond like the mental concern, is kind of low. Like, I applied, I went before the select board, I answered some questions, and then I showed up. And I don't mean to kind of I'm not making a joke of it, but I think once we can get over the kind of initial concern, especially for boards and committees that are appointed and not just elected, I think it's a lot more people can participate than they think they can.
Yeah, and I think the common thread between the two of you is that little bit of mentorship you had along the way. Really having someone who's there to receive you on the other side makes such a huge difference. Hannah and Jasmine, you've chosen a slightly different path as you've gotten started in the organizing space. Talk to me about what that's like, how it's been. It sounds like it just sort of happened. Jasmine, you found yours a bit more intentionally because that's your strength. But yeah, tell me about what that has been like for you as you started.
Yeah, that's a great question, Emily. So our organizing first happened at our workplace. And so from there, we developed a pretty strong coalition of 10 to 15 people who are really feeling the need for more affordable and accessible housing in town. And the next logical step for us with this coalition already built was to find kind of a bigger, broader stage and address this on the town level. The most accessible point for us with that was first attending select board meetings where there was public comment. It was a pretty easy point of entry for people to share their story with housing insecurity for 2 minutes, pretty low commitment, speaking to their experience was a lot easier for young people, I think, than feeling like they needed to be super informed in policy. We got to learn a lot at those meetings, attending them about initiatives that were going on in town, but really sharing our story was the easiest point of entry, I think. And feeling like we could show up in numbers is such a big part of making people feel comfortable too.
Jasmine, what about you and your approach to organizing?
I would say kind of similar. So I, from working with housing assistants, I feel like there's so many people there that are like advocates now. I mean, literally everyone that works for housing assistants. And their knowledge and their support, I have been able to meet with that group that I was talking about and bring in the Town of Orleans. Elizabeth Jenkins actually came in and did a presentation for the downtown zoning overlay. And I kind of like approached it just telling them like, I don't really know what's going on. Like, this is all very new to me. It's new to the people that I brought in. I brought in about 12 younger people that work at Hog Island and that people that I've met through CCYP. And I kind of was just like, just don't be afraid to ask questions. Like, I feel like there are no stupid questions. Like, if I don't understand it, like, please explain it to me like I was like I'm a baby, because that's kind of what I feel like. So with that, we were able to like have just really good conversation, and I was able to get some people's input and go to the planning board hearing last, I think that was September 30th, and I was able to bring everyone's comments and kind of put it all together in one. And I thought that was, I don't know, really exciting. It was pretty cool to see that that's something that I can do. I've never done anything like that before, and it's like overcoming that fear of like, what are they going to think of me? And I think the group that I have also feels that way, and they're pretty excited to keep going and doing that. This is all very new. I literally had like 2 meetings, okay?
I love it. Don't sell yourself short, though, because it's the relationship work that you can do. And you said something when we were preparing for the panel that I've thought about every day since, which is that you have all of their cell phone numbers, and you can just text and be in their face about it and like really say like, gotta show up, send in your comments, let's go, let's go, let's go. And it's really, and Franny, I know you're involved in that group too. Can you speak to the power of relationships in that work?
And I think that's what we love about living here on the Cape. That's why I love Orleans and why I moved home. I love my community, and I love my friends. And I think, I grew up in Orleans, so naturally a lot of the people I grew up with also grew up here, all through, elementary school, middle school, high school. Moving home after college, many of the friends that I have are not people that I knew then. Like we pull in such an incredible, people from all over the country who end up really loving our community. And those relationships are what sustain us through the year. And they're really easy to call on because people care and want to support one another. So I think it's, kind of a no-brainer. It's definitely we're not rewriting the script by any means, but it's definitely meaningful.
Awesome. So we've talked about getting started. Let's talk a little bit about the barriers and challenges. And I'll preface this with saying that CCYP turns 20 this year, so I've been doing a lot of archival work. And a lot of our archival work is touching on this idea of needing young voices in the conversation for the last 2 decades. So it's like clearly there's something that's hard about it. It's a big, big lift. What's been hard for you all in terms of getting activated, staying in it? Anything that, might not occur to others that you'd want them to know?
Starting with me?
Sure, yeah, go for it, Austin.
Sure. So, one of the things that I think is tough for people when they join town boards and committees is the time commitment element of it and the timing of the meetings maybe doesn't always work with people's schedules, and so being flexible on that as moderators. Also, the barrier to entry on understanding Robert's Rules of Order, having some primers on that, and really sort of getting to understand how you work through that process in meetings. And then beyond that, I think a lot of people feel nervous, and obviously being on the select board as the appointing authority for most of the committees, I hear this from people all the time, that they're worried that they may not be able to add value because they're not experts in a given area. Well, I can say as a select board member, I'm not an expert in every area that the select board has to deal with. And it's about relying on the people who are experts, taking their counsel, taking that advice in and doing what's best for your community, and really bringing that passion for your community to the table. That's what matters versus your expertise, because there's always going to be someone there that you can rely on for that background and expertise.
Well said, Austin. I think a big part of what we've struggled with in Falmouth is there just is pretty, based on the industry that's there, the science, among other industries, that work can be transient. It can be pretty hard to keep people engaged in this issue because, there's this idea that I've come across occasionally, well, I'm here for 2 or 3 years, what can I change? But I think my counter to that is it is so rewarding to see change at the local level, as I'm sure everybody in this room knows. And so really, I think the barrier to entry is just getting in the room. And when you're there and you see progress being made and you see people in your community committed to these issues, I think that takes, that has been very motivating for people. But I think attrition can also happen, if you're advocating, for us, a lot of our activism started around the 545 Main Street project. I know Michael Galazzi is in the room, and that project has been a huge endeavor. It's been, I think, going on longer than I've been in town, 4 to 5 years, I think, to get ground broken on this project. And so a lot of the advocates I started with were not able to see that project through before having to move. So I think part of it is, how can we accelerate approvals and engage people and have them kind of see the final output of the work that they're committing to.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think that's a great oops. Still waiting for it to come on. Just saying, I think that's a great point. Hannah and I had similar things as Austin to echo. I think just in general, a huge barrier is just knowing that it's an opportunity that's available to you as a young person. You, like Austin mentioned, there's that kind of imposter syndrome, I guess I would categorize it as. Like, we're not experts. We're young folks starting our careers, so we don't have the depth and breadth of professional experience that many of you in the room have. You've all sat on boards and committees before. Oftentimes you look to your left and your right and you're like, I know that guy doesn't really know what this is about either. But as a young person, you're used to relying on the adult to make the decision and to know. And so I think part of it is knowing that you can participate, understanding how you can go about participating, and recognizing that your value is to show up and to be curious and to ask questions, because you're representing, right, a population of people that also don't know, that also are not going to be experts on the topic in front of them. And what really matters is when we get to town meeting that people have done the work of thinking about the thing that's in front of everyone as best as they can. So I'd echo both of those things.
Yeah, I definitely agree with the timing. I think, a lot of meetings are held during the work day. I'm fortunate enough to be able to attend meetings. I know town meeting will be like at 6 p.m., so that's great. I think that'll be helpful for a lot of people that, but I think, I'm sorry, I keep losing my train of thought.
That's good.
I just have so many things I want to say. I think also just finding the knowledge too. So I know a lot of stuff is posted on town websites, and I get that, that's great, but it's so, unless you know exactly what you're looking for, it's so hard to find anything really on a town website, and they're kind of outdated, sorry. That's my personal opinion. But I think just figuring out a way to bring it to it doesn't necessarily have to be social media, but that's where everyone is on, all the younger people are on Instagram, and I mean, even, I guess, Facebook too, you know, I think having all of that info, like here's the list of the, like, you know, like the planning board meetings, like this is where it is, this is what day it is, like just having it blasted out on socials, I think would be great.
Thank you for pivoting to solutions. I know we've talked a little bit about like feeling like your voice might not be heard, feeling like there's a time conflict with what your normal duties and responsibilities are. Are there ways you could give advice to towns to make things, and I know towns are always asking for advice and it's hard to please everybody, right? But what would you suggest to these like bodies, the committees, the boards, the towns to make this work easier to find, easier to follow, easier to engage with?
Yeah, that's a great question. I would say definitely focusing on being able to work constructively with folks on their schedules, being able to have primers for them on how the meetings are run and operated, and sort of how people work together in the town meeting structure of government, and really taking the time, especially as the moderators, the town staff who are staffing committees, to meet with each member and give them some of the background on what the committee's work has been in the past, an understanding of the committee's sort of purview, I think goes a really long way to make people feel more comfortable, because what I've also seen is that sometimes when people don't know the background of kind of what's going on, they're hesitant to speak up and say, wait, I want to hear a little bit more about that. And so being able to do that outside of a meeting, I think, is really important, because then it encourages people to speak up.
Love that.
I think I think it's important to have young people represented in those boards and committees, but I think something that could be really good is, before asking, can you volunteer your time for this, it would be really great if some more boards and committees just reached out to young people, found places that young people were already organizing. I know, for example, in Woods Hole, there's a Woods Hole Oceanographic Graduate Student Union. Maybe show that you're invested in their story before asking, them to volunteer time. I want to hear about what your issues are, and then kind of present this format for you to get involved. Potentially, I think that could be a good way to get more people involved. And I lost the question a bit. I'm sorry.
Well, that's okay. I think, Hannah, for you, it's a little different in that you're trying to retain advocates versus attend meetings. So how are you reaching your people or getting them to battle against the attrition that happens with the community that you're in?
That's a good question. I think for us, it's kind of making sure people know the resources immediately when people move to town. I know Francesca has talked about how the community of young people in town is very strong. So I think for us, it's been, if somebody moves to town, do you need housing support? Do you know the resources available to you? And that's kind of helped. And then if they're interested or struggling, then approaching with, do you want to kind of take this to the next level and start advocating for what you need?
Yeah, awesome.
Still waiting, thank you. I'd like to just take it back to the question about the accessibility factor, and kind of one thing, kind of touching on something Austin mentioned that I think is important in terms of general accessibility, is continuing to make sure that when possible, we publicize information, especially to younger people, that meetings are on Zoom. You can join virtually if you want to learn more, you're curious, your face isn't going to be on there, you're not going to be asked to say anything, you can literally just call in or join on your computer and listen, and that's a really great way to start kind of hearing kind of passively about what's happening. You can also email in comments, that kind of a thing. I'd like to kind of flip the narrative a little bit. The onus to a certain extent is on town government and boards and committees to make sure that meeting times to a certain extent are accessible to a working population. But realistically, like, we're meeting at town hall, it's essentially 9 to 5. There are staff members whose job it is to be there. They're working, standard hours as well. So I would say, if you are a team manager or a business owner in the community and you value participation from your colleagues or staff members, specifically, younger professionals who don't have as much control over their schedule at this stage in their careers, how can you explicitly let them know that they are able to take the time, whether it's an hour and a half to go to that meeting, to participate on that committee, kind of what resources can you make available to really encourage that participation and make it really a viable option and not a decision of, well, I can't, do this work or participate on that board or committee because those things will interfere. So I think, if this is something that matters to us, it is our form of government, then I think we kind of need that buy-in from the private sector in a way, if you will.
Thank you. I have a follow-up question for you, Francesca, about Zoom. When we were chatting earlier, we were talking about how you don't often beam into other Zoom meetings for other town board members, but folks beam into yours, and then we'll follow up with you afterwards for feedback and conversation.
Yes.
Can you talk a little bit about how that's made things more accessible for you?
Yes, this has happened to me for the first time. I know, when you're on the board and it's publicized, it's on television, we can see the Zoom meeting often, but I don't really think about the fact that people are watching. That's not something that often occurs to me. And my peers don't tend to be the people that are watching or participating either. So I haven't had the experience of, leaving a meeting and then hearing, when I'm at a restaurant or something, someone coming up to be like, oh, hey, I watched that meeting. That tends to happen to other boards and committee members and not really to me. But I recently had 2 experiences where, people got my mom's email actually and said, oh, Francesca, blah, 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 she did a great job. And hearing their feedback on what I had to say, hearing that they felt like what I had to say, my question kind of moved the conversation along or was a question that they had, was really validating to hear from my own townspeople. And so I would say if you are someone that is watching meetings or participating in meetings, wherever you can, giving that kind of encouragement or engaging the younger person makes a big difference, especially because as of now, many of our peers aren't doing that for us. So,
thank you. And I know, Jasmine, your work in Orleans is a little different because you're the person who's making things accessible for others. So talk to us about that. How have you done that work? How can people learn from the work that you've done?
So recently, as I said earlier, I got ahead of myself. I put together a group of just people my age, and we met at Hog Island, which was it had that casual feel to it, which made people more comfortable and able to kind of interact that in a way that didn't feel like they were showing up and had to pretend like they knew what they were talking about, if that makes sense. It was just a couple of tables, we all sat around, and Elizabeth gave the presentation, and I think it flowed very well. And at the end, I had people coming up and asking questions of how, what do we do next? And I'm like, okay. So I think just going from a personal level, text, I was texting them. I'm like, come here at this time and, we'll hang out, we'll have a drink, we'll have some food. And if you feel compelled to share or continue, coming to these kinds of things and speak, and even to the point of speaking at town meeting, I think it's just a couple of baby steps, I would say, to get them into a space that they'd never been before.
Yeah, and you have the on-ramp to the whole infrastructure, right? You've got HAC, you've got the town of Orleans, you've got the community members. You're just putting it in a slightly different environment, so the on-ramp doesn't feel like you have to, climb a vertical wall.
Yes.
You can kind of roll in. That's awesome. Hannah, task forces, committees, they can sometimes feel like talking shop all the time. That's how I felt about today, to be totally honest. How do we help people feel like they can engage with this in a regular, colloquial way and keep the momentum going, if they're not super experts or even medium experts in the space?
It's a really good question. And serving on the task force that I'm involved in, where we're trying to address a lot of issues that are being done by other committees in town, the Planning Board, the Affordable Housing Committee. We were very cautious about retreading ground that other committees had done. So the opportunity we identified was to find ways to increase communication between committees. really, engage with other communities to say, what are you doing? How can we leverage it? How can we bring all of this work together? And then also something we did was organize community roundtables with young families in town, the local workforce, and we got a really good response just within a library. A few nights in March, we got together and we organized these roundtable questions to ask people, what are your housing needs? What are you struggling with? What is the experience of being on a fixed income in town, being housing insecure in town, and trying to advance in your career? And I think that was really a good forum to share resources with actual people in our community and make people aware of the initiatives that were already happening, and then to kind of get the wheels going for getting different committees to work together as well. So,
Thank you. Yep. Other additions to Hannah's thoughts? No? Francesca and Austin, from your positions on boards, what would you tell towns or existing leaders to make folks who are coming in into the space for the first time feel truly welcomed in the space?
Yeah, so I really liked what Francesca had to say about engagement and encouragement of folks and getting that sort of feedback loop in there, because I think that's really important to people. And one thing that I would say is, from generation to generation, there's going to be very different lived experiences and problems and challenges. And as a result, the solutions and what we do about those is going to be very different as well. And it's important to go through the process of understanding whether or not the approach that we're taking is the right one, and being able to openly question that. And there are no dumb ideas. And really, one thing that I heard a lot sort of early on is, oh, we can't do this, or oh, we can't move forward with that type of a proposal because either we've always done it a different way, or we don't think that the state would be okay with that. But no one's ever really gone through the process of running down that answer. And so I think it's really incumbent upon leaders and folks in town staff who are staffing boards and committees and sourcing these ideas from folks of what they think we should be focused on, to really run those down and understand the why behind why something can or can't happen. And if you don't have a great answer to that, then let's collaborate on figuring that out.
Thank you.
I think I would just add, I mentioned earlier that when I first joined the board, I met with my chair, and that kind of encouragement is what really got me over the decision or the kind of fear of potentially joining a board. And I think one thing that made a huge difference for my participation and level of confidence that I noticed is my chair, especially in the beginning months, would ask me explicitly as we were going around during comments, like, Francesca, do you have anything to add? And sometimes I'd be really embarrassed to say no, like, I'm sorry, nope, nothing right now. But sometimes I did have something to add, but I just wasn't sure of the correct timing or place to make a comment. And so being explicitly offered that opportunity to make a comment at the correct time built my confidence, and it also helped me kind of learn the rules of order that Austin mentioned earlier that really can be a barrier. And so, I would say, again, if you're on a board or committee, or you're, working in town government, ask someone that you sit on the committee with, like, do you have something to add? And I think that really helps build confidence in the long run.
Thank you. All right, a question for everyone before we open it up for Q&A. I guess that more than one person in this room is thinking, I care about engaging younger voices on housing advocacy. What's one concrete step you would give? I know we have Orleans, Falmouth, and P-Town represented, but think, regionally. What's one concrete step you would give folks who want to engage younger voices on housing in the room right now that they can take?
So I would go to your town clerk's website, as clunky as it might be, and check the list of current openings on town boards and committees, and think, through your own personal Rolodex of people that you know, is there anyone whose voice might be valuable in this committee, whose experience might be valuable to bring to that, and encourage them to join? Because that's really how I got started, was people encouraging me to join in the conversation. And so I think a lot of people out there either don't know or don't see themselves in those seats, and I think giving them the encouragement to do that is big.
Yeah, I couldn't have said it better. And to further that, I think if, asking is a great thing, even extending an invitation, do you want to come participate? Can we ask you questions? Finding some way to get them kind of accustomed and involved before committing, just so you have a sense of kind of what you're signing up for. Because I think a thread that I've seen is like, you got into the room and you're like, oh, I can do this, so it's taking the steps to really convince young people of that.
I think along that similar thread, I would say, I think one thing every single person in this room can do is start having more casual conversations with the young people in your life, children, grandchildren, colleagues. If you're involved in policy or you're thinking about things that are happening in your town, don't just leave that at work and then just talk about fun things at home. That can be fun too. It can be a dinner conversation. Talk to them about what you're hearing about, ask what they think. I think the sooner that we can make it a casual conversation that happens at earlier ages, the less the barrier is to overcome. And the sooner young adults can start building confidence to follow the thread themselves, to learn more, to be curious, to start entering kind of more formal spaces. So I think those casual conversations are really key.
Yes, and I agree with everything you guys just said. That's literally perfect. I have no notes. But I do agree with just the casual conversation. I think that's exactly how I got into it, was just being able to just go up to your peers and just chat about it.
Thank you. Questions from the room?
There we go. There is one really great question here that says, I've been trying to reach out to young people for 15 years. Where are you? TikTok, YouTube, Instagram. I've never seen meetings catering to younger people that I could attend. Help!
Oh my gosh, a beautiful question. I have some answers, but I wonder if I'll take the privilege of the podium to say CCYP is a wonderful resource. We've developed segmented lists for every town. We have hundreds and hundreds of young people all across the Cape in every corner of every town who are ready to be mobilized. So if you're trying to reach young people, leverage us, info@ccyp.org. Happy to connect you with the membership. It's over 15,000 people who we've got, and we know where they are. So come work with us, certainly. Questions, thoughts, suggestions from the panel?
Goodness, that's tough. I mean, I think it really depends on what type of young constituency you're looking to reach, but ultimately identifying what are going to be the social spaces that constituency is in might be the best way to get exposure, because that's where people are going to more commonly gather in person, and at least that's what I found in Provincetown, because we are a very social community. So I think that's a big area.
Yeah, I totally agree. As nice as updated messaging on Facebook and Instagram and YouTube can be, I think you can't substitute any of those for some good in-person communication and community building. So I totally agree with Austin. I know I said the Graduate Student Union is a big place in Woods Hole that young people have organized, but I know if you go to the Falmouth Run Club, for example, there's a bunch of people you're likely to find in a space like that who really care about having trails that are updated. And so using those other social spaces as a point of entry to see, I know how much you care about this, let's make it actionable, volunteer your time to make the changes you want to see in our community. I think that's a really good place to start as well.
Awesome. I'll add that just on the topic of Falmouth, CCYP is in every town at least twice a year. We do 4 events a month. We're in Falmouth next month at Bad Martha. So we'll see Hannah there for sure, and it'll be a really good in-person opportunity to get together. It's always so fun to go to those events too, because folks walk in and they're like, oh, right, there's 150 people under the age of 45 here. This is really, really nice. So yeah, I think in-person is where it's at, certainly given the deluge of information we're getting digitally. Freddie?
I would just echo those points, and just as a reminder, you don't have to be the one to organize the group or create the community, right? You have to tap that one person that's going to go then do the work of reaching out to their friends. I think, sometimes as younger people, we can be protective of our personal time and our space. There are lots of demands for attention these days, and it really, again, helps having those personal connections. So Orleans, Jasmine was the person that was tapped, and she had the network, and she brought the people together and made it happen. It wasn't a pre-existing group. And so sometimes, it can be hard, maybe a little bit, finding that one person. It doesn't just look like one exact type of person either, but I would just remember that there are, networks that already exist, and you don't have to be the one to necessarily create it. You can rely on the people that are already there.
Thank you. It's a great point. Other questions?
Sure. So one other question is, what other misconceptions do you think older people have about your generation, and that are either relevant or that are relevant to your work around housing?
Ooh, I think a major one is that that younger people don't want to follow in the footsteps of homeownership and family building. I think that it's important to recognize that the barrier to entry on those areas has become almost insurmountable for many people. And so really recognizing how can we break those barriers down, to allow people to go through those processes, I think is a huge one.
Yeah, absolutely. I know at meetings before, when a young person in our group has spoken up, they've been, found later in the day by somebody very well-meaning whose point of view has been, I've had it hard too, And so I think that definitely, figuring out messaging from our side on that is always something that we're trying to work on, is acknowledging that people have struggled before and pinpointing the ways that this time around it's a bit different, and making that accessible. So.
Awesome. I think we're going to wrap, and I'm going to have everyone finish a sentence sort of wait, don't tell me style as a wrap up. So to all the panelists, finish this sentence. The housing crisis on Cape Cod won't be solved until, and Austin, I'm going to start with you.
I think until every community on Cape Cod is able to provide attainable housing to all of the essential workforce of the town. I don't think it's acceptable to externalize that to other neighboring communities. I think that it's incumbent upon each community to do that.
Thank you. Hannah?
I'm going to say there's coordinated action and communication between committees in town and the region.
I'll say until we prioritize the people that live here and not just the place that we live in.
And as well, until our generation's voices are amplified and heard.
Thank you, everyone.